Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Tournament Takes. Hope you guys had a great week. Hope you guys are having an awesome Thanksgiving break. Let's get into it. This is the Thanksgiving show. It's only a two-game slate. We had Baltimore and Pittsburgh postpone their game due to COVID positive tests. So let's just dive into it. On this slate at quarterback, we got Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, Ben are out, obviously. We got Stafford, Dalton, and Alex Smith. So before we get into these two games and kind of my picks on what I like, I kind of wanted to go through a little bit of strategy. Since it's a two-game slate, I went back and kind of looked at all the Monday, Thursday, slates this year, and I kind of noticed a kind of a trend that I wanted to share with you guys really quick before we got into this slate. So let's take a look at it. One of the slates was this one right here. We had Patrick Mahomes. This was the optimal lineup. They left 600 on the table. I don't think this was entered in a contest, but this was the best lineup on that particular day, right? So they had Patrick Mahomes. They had Hardman, Hill, Kelsey, and the Chiefs defense. They also had Edwards-Helaire, and then they had a couple of players from the Jets, and then a couple players from the Denver, and then one back with the Jets. In the second game, we see Aaron Rodgers, we see Jones, Scantling, Tanyan, and then they had a couple run backs from that game, cheap run backs, and then they had a few Bears mixed in. Another slate we saw was right here. We saw Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, Scantling, Adams. They had three of the Bucks players, and then they had two of the San Francisco's in the run back. We have another one right here where it was Carson Wentz, Kenyon Drake, Kirk, and they had a bunch of a stack of the Giants and the Philly game, and then the Cardinals defense. And then one more I was looking at, you have Matt Ryan, Todd Gurley. You had a bunch of the Rams players, and then one run back in the Atlanta game. So what I'm noticing as a trend in the past few weeks on the two-game slates, it's usually a dominant team that takes it all down. Like that's going to be the optimal lineup. And now it may also be that these are just better offenses. But what I noticed is that the teams that are winning, like these teams that are winning, a lot of their quarterbacks are not rushing quarterbacks, right? Like Matt Ryan isn't rushing for touchdowns. Carson Wentz not really rushing for touchdowns. Mahomes is not really rushing as much for touchdowns. Rodgers not really rushing for touchdowns in both those slates, right? So right at the top, we have Deshaun Watson, and I know a lot of people this week are going to be on him. He is a good play in this scenario, against that Detroit. Detroit's been horrible against the run this year. That's why I think a lot of people are going to be on Duke Johnson as well, and people are going to be on Watson. But they've also been horrible against the pass, right? And Deshaun Watson is actually throwing the deep ball at a pretty good rate. Now in this game, they do have one of their receivers, Cobb, is on IR. Kenny still is out. So Kiki QT plays most of his snaps out of the slot. So what I think they're going to do in this game, they might push Brandon Cooks to the outside right, and Will Fuller normally plays the outside left, and they're going to just they're going to work the ball maybe through the middle through Kiki QT. So QT I think is a decent play, but I'm not really going there on this slate. Like I mentioned, I do like Watson, but given the amount that he's going to be owned in the slate, it's not somewhere where I think I'm going to go. And the reason for that is Watson is rushing for touchdowns, right? So in theory, he should be typically the highest fantasy producer on the slate. But what that's doing on a two-game slate, I think it's kind of taken away a little bit from his receivers. So what I may want to do in this scenario is if I'm playing Watson, I may not want to stack him, like overload stack him, because if he's scoring, his receivers are not scoring, right? So when people are going to stack Watson and the pass catchers, they're probably going to go to Fuller, and they're probably going to go to Brandon Cooks, which are both amazing plays. They may not play Duke Johnson as well, right? So I feel like if Watson's rushing for these touchdowns, it kind of hurts the entire stack. Whereas on Detroit, Matt Stafford, he's going to be throwing the ball. He's more likely to get his pass catchers and him are likely to have more stronger correlation on this just two-game slate as opposed to Watson and his receivers. And that's purely because of the rushing upside. So while I think Watson is a good play in himself, I think a stack of Watson is not something that I want to do. right? So I think this game is going to be close. I think you're going to see Houston move the ball. Detroit is down a bunch of receivers, right? They're down. Danny Amendola is out. Kenny Galladay is out. So you have Marvin Jones, Marvin Hall, and then Cephas. I don't even know. I mean, they activated Sanu. I don't know if he's really going to play. Hawkinson is probably going to be a pretty good target to get to in this game. And a lot of people are going to go to Swift. Now, if Swift doesn't go in this game, I think you're going to want to take some shots on Kerryon Johnson. Swift has actually had a really, really good, breakout second half of the season. In this particular game, I really like Swift because of, not only the rushing matchup, but Houston's not great against the short pass. So if they get behind, you're going to also see a bunch of dump offs to Swift. So I think he's in a really good spot. Same with, if Swift is out due to that, he was out due to a concussion. It wasn't like a hamstring or anything like that. So, if he's cleared, I think he's a great play, someone where I want to get to. Kerryon Johnson, if Swift doesn't go, is someone that I think I want to target in this game because of the fact that he's getting so many targets. He's getting targets in the passing game. I like him a little bit over Adrian Peterson. Now I'll get to my favorite actually stack on the slate. I really like Alex Smith coordinated with his with the pass catchers. The reason is because Alex Smith, we're seeing that he is throwing the ball, significant amount. He didn't play that last game against Dallas, and Dallas does have Andy Dalton back, so I expect this game to actually be a little bit closer than just an overload of Washington. But I also could see Washington just torching them completely because they're having, Dallas has had a really hard time rushing the ball and getting getting points on the board this season. So I really like Alex Smith. I like Terry McLaurin. McLaurin's going to be chalky. And he's questionable in this game. He has I think it was a hamstring injury, which was, or sorry, ankle injury, which was he was limited by. But overall, he is their number one receivers, and they are giving up the deep pass. Dallas is giving up the deep pass, as we saw last week. Adam Thielen and Jefferson both had great games. I think McLaurin is the first guy that I'm going to be putting into my lineups this week. He has that kind of upside, which can kind of break the slate. At 7,000, he's a little expensive, so you do need him to kind of score a touchdown. But this is somewhere where I really think I want to go. On the Dallas side, it's really, really spread out. Like most of the other offenses on this slate with Houston, with Detroit, and with Washington, you're kind of, for the most part, the targets are pretty condensed, right? You see it's going to a few people. Houston, you can argue that, maybe Akins and Fells in there get some. But for the most part, I feel like it's pretty concentrated. On Dallas, it's like Schultz, Cooper, Lamb, and Gallup, and along with Zeke and Pollard mixing in, they're all getting equivalent work. So maybe not Pollard, but Ezekiel, Elliott, Lamb, Gallup, and Cooper are all really mixed in. So I think you're gonna see ownership a little bit lower on the Dallas stacks in this scenario, and it's somewhere I also kind of want to be light on. I actually may not even want to take anyone from Dallas at all. If they're playing from behind, you could definitely see someone like an Amari Cooper or CeeDee Lamb hitting. You could also see, Andy Dalton having a pretty good game. But this Washington defense has been really, really good. Last week, they did kind of hold Cincinnati down. Joe Burrow did leave that game with an injury, but they had a pretty good game. And for the most part, they're decent. Their defense has been getting pressure on quarterbacks. So this is somewhere where I think I was targeting Pittsburgh against Baltimore. But since that game is no longer on slate, I kind of want Washington on defense, and I think they will be highly owned. So a key in this spot on this slate, what I'm doing is I'm really kind of fading Ezekiel Elliott. I know a lot of people are playing him. I hope his ownership is pretty high, so it gives me a little bit of leverage by fading him. I just don't think that this is a great spot for him. They haven't been running the ball well. They did run the ball better against Minnesota. It was a much better matchup for him. Like I said on my video last week, I thought he was a play that could break the slate and you run it back with two Minnesota pass catchers. And that was actually a combo that actually took down some big tournaments last week. So in this scenario, I'm kind of off Ezekiel Elliott. I do like the Houston pieces, but I don't know if I want it in a second. Again, the reason for that is because I think Deshaun Watson takes enough away in the rushing upside. If he rushes for one touchdown, that's one touchdown less that's going to any one of his receivers. So from my reasoning for that is, okay, he has that high floor. We're seeing that he's able to, put up 4 or 5 touchdowns. My concern is Detroit going to be able to put up 4 or 5 touchdowns to keep up with him, right? So if he's taking away, touchdowns from his receivers by rushing it in, it's kind of making me less likely to play the entire stacks. Now, Detroit is giving up the deep ball significantly down the field, down the left of the field and down the right of the field. So in this scenario, I do like Fuller as number one, and I also do like Brandon Cooks. Now, a lot of people are going to play Fuller and Cooks because they're saying, okay, if I'm playing both receivers, I want the quarterback too. In this scenario, I don't want Watson, right? So I think that this is a little more contrarian type of build, is where you're taking two receivers, but you're not taking the quarterback that goes with them. Not to mention Duke Johnson's also there. You know, CJ Prosise is there. I kind of just want to play Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks for their security, for the amount of targets that I think they're getting. I think they're better plays. I mean, you can argue that Detroit receivers are pretty good plays as well because the targets are condensed, but I think they're better plays than the Dallas receivers considerably. You know, at the prices at 6,400 and at 5,300, I feel like they're much better than you know, Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. I don't kind of want to get into that mess. You could take a shot. You know, it's just you're gonna have to be right on one of them, and that's not something that I want to get into. So the way I'm building, I'm only going to be rolling out one lineup. We could do this kind of lineup with, you know, with every single team. You know, one of the tournaments I think you should target this week, on this Thanksgiving slate, or try to target single entries, because you know, people who are going to be playing 150 lineups, they're going to be playing variations of Houston stacks. They're going to have exposure to Detroit stacks, Washington, and Dallas. And when you have 4 different stacks, you're kind of covering all your bases. You know, like when you're playing every single quarterback on the slate, you're going to have a much better chance, obviously, of winning. So on a 2-game slate like this, I think I just want to play a single entry contest where it's forcing the people that you're playing against to make a decision to play their best plays. And I think in the single entry contest, you're going to see Deshaun Watson's ownership really, really high. Now, like I said, I do like Alex Smith because I believe that, you know, he's been throwing the ball fairly well. This is a good matchup for him. Last week, he didn't really need to throw that ball. And if this is a scenario where you know, Dallas can actually keep up, then I think Alex Smith could have a really, really good game. I also do like Antonio Gibson. I know he's going to be chalky. It's a good matchup for him, and we're seeing he scored a touchdown in almost 1, 2, 3, 4. Since coming back from the bye, he scored in week 8, week 9, 10, and 11, right? And before going into the bye against Dallas. So I think that he's had a touchdown in 1, 2, 3, the last 4 weeks he's had at least one touchdown. He's getting the goal line work, which makes me comfortable paying his price. Now, the thing that throws a wrench into this is Peyton Barber did get some touches last week, which was kind of annoying. He also did get a red zone carry. I'm just not really taking too much stock into that. I'm just I'm not really factoring him in as much. You know, if he gets a touchdown and kind of burns me, he's going to be like a 2% play, which might win someone, you know, the entire GPP. But for me, it's kind of a fade in this spot. Like I said, if, you know, DeAndre Swift doesn't go at 6,500, I would rather play Kerryon Johnson at 4,300 because of the passing upside. And the matchup is good for short passes and the short running back. So this is kind of something that I'm looking to do. This is the way I'm starting my builds. At the second running back, I did mention, so like we said, if I go back to some of these, or if I go back to something like, let's see, something like this, we see that, you know, they did have, you know, Aaron Jones. They had a couple of those, and they had a couple run backs. In this particular scenario, like I mentioned with Dallas, I really don't want a run back. So I kind of want to go full onslaught Washington. Now, it's going to be a contrarian move because Washington's total is the lowest on this slate. I just feel like they're in a good spot. I feel like their targets are condensed to where it gives me the upside to potentially get there. Now, I know I said, you know, if Watson is rushing for touchdowns, that's taken away upside from his receivers. The same thing can be said with Gibson, right? If Gibson's scoring, then it's taken away from the entire stack. I just feel that the Houston and Dallas game could be potentially a little bit closer than the Houston-Detroit, given that Detroit's missing so many of their key players. So I kind of want to go full Washington stack, which is like a contrarian type build in this scenario. I want to take 2v2, so I'll take a Fuller and a Cooks on the Houston side, and I kind of like I said, I do like DeAndre Swift, and I kind of like Hawkinson because he's going to be getting those targets down the middle of the field. Houston hasn't been good against the short pass, so I don't mind Hawkinson as a play there. And then it leaves you about $5,000 left for your flex spot. Now, in this scenario, I think I maybe want to, let's see who's available on this slate. So at $5,000, you could play anyone essentially, right? I think instead of playing Hawkinson, I kind of want to target a little bit more of. I kind of want one more piece of the Washington passing game. So I am getting Alex Smith with McLaurin and Logan Thomas. I am getting Gibson. Now the key is here is Alex Smith is cheap enough to where if he gets a long bomb to, to Terry McLaurin, that in itself, like a 40-yard touchdown, is going to give Alex Smith a significant amount of points. It's going to 8 to 10 points, right? I think you're people are playing McLaurin here not only for the volume, but he also has the best matchup in terms of the deep pass, and Alex Smith can throw the deep pass. So in this scenario, I really like pairing Alex Smith with McLaurin and Gibson. Because I feel like that entire Washington defense has a chance to kind of go off in this spot, right? And I feel like they will be the most under-owned stack on this slate. So the last piece here, the 6,200 you have left, you could say if you want to play Duke Johnson, you could play someone like an Amari Cooper, but I'm more likely to go Marvin Jones and kind of leave some money on the table. We've seen also in the past on 2-game slate, the way to really get different is to leave money on the table. We saw a few weeks ago people won it with like leaving I think $2,000 or $3,000 off on the table. So this is the kind of build that I'm targeting this week. This is more of like my take on it is I don't mind you guys paying for Watson. You guys could also do something like this where if you didn't want to go with the full Washington onslaught, you could also say, all right, I think Washington gets behind. Maybe you want to play with you play an Amari Cooper there, or you want to really you say, okay, I really want Deshaun Watson. He has the highest upside on the slate. I really don't care, if he's rushing for touchdowns. I feel like Detroit can keep it close. Then I think in this scenario you want to kind of, instead of having the Washington football team here, you maybe hope that the Texans get a couple of touchdowns here, or like a couple of sacks as well. So maybe you play Texans defense here, and then you roll out another maybe a McKissick, right? So you still have some pieces of the Washington. You have McLaurin, Logan Thomas, and McKissick, and you're kind of running it back with just a DeAndre Swift. Or if you want to take a shot on someone like an Adrian Peterson, or if you want to take a shot on maybe Hawkinson here, right? You have a 2-run back with Deshaun Watson. This kind of build I feel like is going to be a little more chalkier. That's why I feel like the way to get different on this particular slate is to go with the cheaper owned quarterback, even though he doesn't provide that upside. We're seeing, like I said, on the past slates, Patrick Mahomes, top tier quarterback, taking it down. You had Matt Ryan on this slate, but you also had a couple. You had like Teddy Bridgewater. You had a couple. It was a lot closer. Matt Ryan ended up being the optimal. And you look at the salary; it was only $43,000 spent. Another spot was $49,400. On this one, I think the salary was $47,000. So they left a significant amount of money on the table. So these are all lineups that they left like $900 here, right? They're leaving money on the table, but they're also taking the best quarterback in this scenario, right? They left $14,000 on the table, $13,000 to $14,000 on the table. The lineup still put up 182, and they didn't play, they didn't play Kyler Murray, right? They had Carson Wentz, Greg Ward, Richard Rodgers, and then you had a touchdown to Boston Scott. They also were able to get, different at some of their spots. So I think something like this is a slate where you do want to leave money on the table. It is more similar to kind of a showdown slate. Just play the plays that you think, that give you the highest upside. So Watson in this scenario is he's going to be, I think, at least 70% owned, which is going to kind of give you a huge edge if you're playing Washington stacks. It's going to give you a huge edge, like with someone with like Alex Smith, that allows you to go get Swift and Gibson. In my opinion, I'm probably going to be full fading Dallas in this spot. Maybe take a shot at someone like an Amari Cooper, but I don't think I'm going to be playing EZEKIEL, ELLIOTT, or anything like that. So good luck, guys. I'll see you guys back here for the Week 11 or Week 12. What is it? Week 12 slate. And good luck on Thanksgiving. Hope you guys enjoy the day, enjoy the meals with your family, and let's make it a profitable one. Take care.